Well, let's get started. We're running a little bit late, but I would like to thank everyone for being here, and I can tell you that I think you're going to gain a lot of information and insight out of this workshop. My name is Julie Clark, if you don't know me yet already, and my husband is in the back, Dr. John Clark. And we have a nonprofit organization, and when I say we, that includes a board. And our speaker today, Jenifer Skues, is our vice president. John's the president, she's the vice president. So she really has a lot to do with our work. Our work is health education, and as we travel across the United States doing this full time, we often run into a problem, which is that people's stress is making them sick, literally. And it becomes very apparent as you start talking through with a person, and given the training and the education that we've received through Jenny, we can now identify stress in other people, and it's like, well, how do we help these people? So we today, if you've noticed, have a camera going and lights, and we're hoping to produce a DVD out of this. It won't be available probably till the late part of this year. If you haven't already, sign up on our newsletter list and we'll announce when it's available. And then if you'd like it to share with others, then you can let us know. So that's in the works. Jenifer Skues is a good friend of mine. We met about 11 years ago in Australia. I lived in Australia for a long time. I'm a dual citizen. And we've kept in touch over the years. And Jenny is a psychologist who works a lot in the clinical setting in an outpatient hospital.
It's inpatient as well, psychiatric hospital.
It's both inpatient. Really? But not locked facility?
No.
Okay.
We send them away to be locked up.
Yeah. Well, in the public hospitals on the Gold Coast, they have a psych unit which you can't.
Is lock up.
You get in there and you can't get out.
We let them out as volunteers.
So, but I'm going to let Jenny explain to you more about her training and background, and I'm just really happy for her to be here, and here she is.
Thank you. Right. Well, a lot of my training has been in health psychology, and the predominance has been looking at stress and stress management. And as I've worked over the years, it was early 1993 when I first was registered and studying and practicing. So I've done a lot of work on stress and health. And I have found in all the years I've worked that stress has been the major factor in health, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual health. The stress factor is huge. I mean, the reality is we were all going to get stressed at times, but it's what you do with it and how you handle it that is important. So we're going to focus on some of those things today. I currently work in a psychiatric hospital. I've been there for 10 years, and I also have private work that I do. So I see people outside of that setting. In the clinic, we work with mental, emotional illnesses and health, and I find that it is all driven by stress. And when people learn to manage their stress, because stress is so pervasive, it's not just that feeling, it has to do with what's happening to your body and your mind at the same time. What doctors now are saying about at least 90% or more of illnesses that they treat are stress-related or stress-driven. So I think this is a key factor, and I know to survive life, and life is stressful, just arriving here into the swine flu area, it's if I was stressed, it's going to make it worse because stress impacts things so much. So what I'll do, I've done a little introduction here because also as a Christian, I've done a lot of study of how does this relate to us on a spiritual level as well. And so just to start things, I've chosen a couple of very good verses because I've found that the Bible does have a lot to say about what stress is and how to treat it. And what we're going to do today, part of my aim is to let's put it on the practical day-to-day level. And there are some very good things you can learn about how to work with the mind and keep your stress levels down that will be very valuable. But in Matthew 6:25 to 34 has quite a few verses that tell us not to worry about anything, but I've just taken verse 34. And it might be something that you would like to look at. So if you really want to look at this, I think there's a lot of information just in Matthew 6:25-34. But in verse 34 is a key. It says, "Take therefore no thought for tomorrow," or the morrow. And some versions say, "Do not be anxious for tomorrow. For the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself." In other words, let's take care of it then. We don't have to worry about it today. "Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof." In other words, we've got to deal with things today. And one of the things I've done, and I'll be showing you, is a model I work with, living in the present. How do we do that? Because often our headspace is not in the present moment. And the Bible tells us what to do with our mind. So in Colossians 3:2, it says, "Set your mind on things above, not on the things on earth." On the earth. How often do we get caught up in all the garbage that's going on around us, and we forget to feed the spirit or look to another way of solving it? And then it does give us an answer in Philippians 4:4, because it says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice." So how many joyful people do you know? Sometimes not many, but that's what we are meant to be. So I'm going to start by just looking at what is stress. So if I ask you the question, what is stress, what would you tell me? How would you?
Muscles.
Sorry, what was that? Muscles, yeah, the way, whenever you move even a little finger, the muscles have to stress. Right. So stress is often physically oriented, isn't it? Okay.
I'd like to have more.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone else has got any explanations of stress. Worrying is part of stress, isn't it? It's what we're doing mentally and emotionally.
Overloading your activity.
Yeah, overloading. So there are lots of things that happen with stress. As soon as we overload, if we're worrying, we're not living in the present, we can get very stressed. But usually from a more scientific perspective, they look at the body's reaction to the stressor. So when something happens, so what are some of the physical reactions or the body's reactions to stressors, do you think? Yes.
Happiness in your chest, your breathing.
Yes, absolutely. Because one of the main things that happens, you get a lot of adrenaline pumping, okay, and then your breathing rate changes. So there's lots of signs and symptoms to stress. Okay, what was that?
Headaches.
Headaches, yes. Another good one is headaches. Often the stomach churning, can't digest your food, changes appetite. You're feeling highly anxious, you can feel distressed. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little overview up here, because we have stress at the top of the ladder here. And then, but we have two types of stress. We've got what we call eustress, and we have distress. I know what I'd rather have. Certainly not the distress. Distress is what we're talking about here. We're talking about how the body reacts in a very stressful way, and there's lots of things, and we will look at that a little bit more and look at how we deal with that. Eustress is a word for good stress. So what is good stress? We do have good stress. It's not all bad. We only think it's bad. Strong? When you're feeling strong, you mean? Yep, okay, well that's good, isn't it? Yes.
Like a wedding?
Yes, a positive event is a good...
Or a birth of a baby?
Yes, but you have a look, the birth process is very stressful, but having the baby is a happy event.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And I find often distress and eustress, good stress and bad stress can go together, okay? Like going on a holiday is great. I love being on holidays, and like being here is wonderful. To get here was stressful, so I had so much to do before I left. So going home, you got all your stuff, you've got to clean and unpack, and so we have a look, there's a mixture of good and bad, and often the good stress can counteract the bad stress. So we've got the good here and the bad here. Now, when you have a look at mental emotional illness, what we have found, stress is at the top here, and you've got depression, the depression disorders. So it's a bit of a pyramid, and if we continue to stay really distressed, then we can get anxiety as well.
Does that mean you're anxious?
Yes. Yeah, you're feeling very, very anxious, and sometimes people don't just feel anxious all the time, they can go into what we call panic. They're so distressed that they can't breathe properly, and they actually upset the whole body balance. So I don't know if anyone here has ever had a panic attack.
I am.
You have, okay. It's not very nice. You feel like you're going to die and your whole chest is closing over. And
Everything you list, I've been there.
you've been there. Oh, okay. Well, you're a good model for us to work from. Okay. So, because when we get stressed, the body functions change. You've talked about a few of those functions, okay? Adrenaline is a key factor. When we have too much adrenaline in the system, and adrenaline stays in your system for quite a few hours. So, and you do not need a huge big stress. Just one little thing will hit that button. You get a phone call that's frustrating. You get to the supermarket and you've got to line up and you can't find the product you want because it's not on the shelf anymore. And through the day, we don't debrief these things. By the end of the day, you're feeling stressed. Then you sit down and have a meal and the body's struggling with that meal because of the stress. Then you go to bed, and what happens when you've got too much adrenaline and you're stressed? Can't sleep. What's the brain doing? Overtime. You're exhausted. You lie down, your head hits the pillow, and what happens? The brain starts. Oh no, that was really annoying today, and what have I got to do tomorrow? And I didn't get that done. And we have this dialogue. So there are two areas we look at here. One is certainly the physical, right? But the other is to do with the mind or the mental. They're the two prongs that I work with initially to help people. And certainly with the physical, that covers a lot of information. And I know this is where some of the information or programs you've been going to with Dr. Clark has been looking at the physical. You know, how do you help the physical body? So we're not going to go into all that physical side. The physical part of it that I'm going to look at is what's happening with your adrenaline, and also to do with how that affects your breathing. Okay, with your mind, predominantly it's looking at how you're thinking. So when you're stressed, what sort of thoughts do you have? Worrying thoughts, okay. Often mad thoughts or bad thoughts or thoughts that are repetitive. You go over and over something. You know, you go to bed and your brain's hooked on something and you can't get rid of it. Okay, so we're going to have a look at some simple techniques. I do have a handout here, and I've got quite a few handouts, and Julie will just give them out, so you might want to just put them under your chair when you've had a little look at them. This is just giving an overview of what is optimum stress, because if we don't have any stress, we don't function. Just the example you were saying about the muscles. If we don't move muscles so we don't stress, then we're not going to do anything. Okay, so here we've got a curve that shows stress levels. And if you have a look, there is an optimum area of stress. And this is where we don't do enough, we get bored, we're not doing enough, and this is where we go into overload. We have high stress, anxious and unhappiness. I don't see that many people who are bored. I see most people at this end of the spectrum. Although boredom can be, you know, if you've ever been bored, it can be stressful. So, but there's quite a big area there where we have an optimum performance. So this means you need X amount of stress to drive you. For example, adrenaline is for a purpose, isn't it? So why do we have adrenaline? We've created with a body that's got all these things in it. So why do we have adrenaline, do you think? Any ideas?
I think it's an automatic.
It's an automatic thing. The moment you have a stressful thought or you interpret something as stressful, the adrenals produce the adrenaline and it surges through your system, and it doesn't take minutes to do that. It's instantaneous. Okay. Now, if you are driving... Sorry, what was that? Oh, we just had a noise that was... It's a bit of stress, isn't it? You hear the noise and it hits the adrenaline button. Okay, if you're driving down the road and someone shoots out from a side road, you're not expecting them, how do you react? What happens?
Slam on the brakes.
Slam on the brakes. And how long does it take you to think about that? You don't go, oh, there's someone coming out, I better stop. Instant. Okay, that is adrenaline. We are given adrenaline to protect us, to keep us safe, so we can act and react at appropriate times. But the problem with modern day society is we don't use it just for that purpose. We don't then go and wind down. We then drive around on red alert all day and go to bed thinking about the awful accident and how you might have got killed if you hadn't stopped. Okay, would that be the issue? So this is where once the adrenaline button is pressed, the other thing that happens is your breathing rate changes. Okay, so what happens? What sort of breathing might you have when adrenaline is pumping?
Fast.
Very fast, sorry, what was that?
Hyperventilation?
Hyperventilation, yeah, we overbreathe. It's very rapid. Usually, initially shallow, rapid breathing, where we're really puffing and panting it in and out, and then we can overbreathe, whether you breathe in too much and not breathe enough out. Right. Now, if you have an imbalance of carbon dioxide and oxygen, the body is in great distress, okay? So then you're going to come into this area here. Okay, so we want to keep it back here, and this is where the two tools I work with is regulating breathing and getting the mind to refocus. Right, now I know it sounds simple, but I'm sure you'll also say, well, if it's that simple, why don't I do it? Right, so because you are creatures of habit. How long have you been reacting to stress the way you are? Yeah, it's automatic pilot, and this is trying to now get you off of automatic pilot and get you doing some other things. It's doing things, some simple techniques that as we go, we will work with. Okay, now I've got a couple of other handouts here, but I'm just going to read them out at the moment, and then when you get them, you can study them. So I've got an effects of stress on the body, and it talks about the brain, the mood, what happens even with your saliva, your muscles, your heart. We don't need all this information for what I'm doing, but it'll just give you a good overview of what these symptoms are. But when it comes to the brain, the blood supply increases. That's initially. So when you are stressed, you get a lot more blood to the brain. Why? Why would we get more blood to the brain?
Because you're thinking.
Get your thinking, yeah, get things going. You're good at this. You're doing well. The long term, if you keep doing that, you're going to get headaches, migraines, things that will show a lot of stress in that area. Okay, so it's not for prolonged. It should be short-term blood supply increase to solve the problem, deal with the stress. With the mood, we can get very serious. We can have to concentrate too hard in the short term, but in the long term we can get anxious, we lose our sense of humour, life becomes too serious, and everything becomes more and more stressful, if you want to see it that way. Okay, Julie's just giving that handout now. So as I said, I don't want to go through all of those, but it just gives you an idea, because I think it's important to understand what your body's doing. We've been created with this wonderful mechanism, and if we're not careful, that mechanism will go wrong, and if we don't understand it, then it's not going to change. Okay. The other handout I'm giving just as the overview is the warning signs of stress. Now, some of this you've already discussed with me. We've talked about some of these. A few I'll add in there. When you're very stressed, you can get very irritable, overexcited, the heart can pound, you can get dry throat and mouth. We can get very impulsive, react too quickly to things, feel emotionally up and down. Some people will cry or want to run and hide. We can't concentrate. We can be more accident prone when we're under a lot of stress. We can feel weak, dizzy, fatigued. We can get this general anxiety where we're just anxious, but we don't know what we're anxious about. Sounds and things can really upset us easily. Insomnia, we can grind our teeth. We can't sit and relax. We can sweat a lot or perspire a lot. The digestive tract does overtime, your bowels and your bladder will do overtime. You can get neck pain, back pain, headaches. We can lose our appetite or want to eat too much. Some people comfort eat when they're under stress and eat and eat and eat, and that's not good, and not eating enough is not good. Habits like here, it talks about smoking. So some of our health habits will change and we will be doing things we don't want to do. We might rely on medicines. And sometimes we need medicine, but generally a lot of the use I find of prescribed medication is because of stress. And when people learn to deal with the stress, they don't need the medication. So if you're dealing with the stress and you don't get the headache, you don't need the headache tablets. Because we're not taught how to deal with stress and keep ourselves at a good equilibrium, the body will then react. And of course, I know I was brought up to trust a doctor, and I'm sure I need doctors at times, but generally we need to learn to manage our health a lot more, and then we won't need all of that. So it just gives you a good list there. Now, what is What is it that we need to do with this? I guess when you're looking at adrenaline, we have several modes. Once the adrenaline kicks in to protect yourself, you've got fight or flight or freeze. Some people under stress freeze. They're immobilised, they can't act. Some people want to run, and then some people will want to stand up and fight. All right, so if you've ever had anyone who's stressed backed into a corner, they're likely to physically or verbally lash out to protect themselves. Okay, but in our day and age, if you're working somewhere, how easy is it to fight or flight? Can you run out of work and disappear, or can you stand up and punch your boss? No. So often we're in compromising situations that are stressful and we don't have anywhere to go with it. So we carry it home with us, and then we might take it out on the kids, the wife, the dog, the cat, or everything else around us. It becomes displaced. Or we take it to bed with us and then we don't sleep well. And when you don't sleep well, what's it like the next day? Not nice. Irritable, miserable.
More stress.
Yeah, you can't function, just want to go to bed again, and if you do that, you don't sleep that night either. So you get into this negative cycle of trying to cope, and you don't know where to go with it.
How do you cure that?
That's what we're going to talk about here. Well, we're going to work with that. So it's,
When you say that excitement goes with adrenaline,
yes,
and deep breathing kind of
that's what we need.
holds you down.
Absolutely. Well, you've got one of the answers then, haven't you? You've already learnt that one. Yeah, because that's one of the cures I use for people is to do deep breathing. Even deep breathing will stop the adrenaline button. Yeah, and it is instantaneous. If you are in that car and you've been sideswiped or nearly hit, if you do some deep breathing, and it's really drawing it in and using the whole lungs, they call it diaphragm breathing, deep breath or stomach breathing out, you will find that your adrenaline will stop and settle down. The body produces other chemicals to get equilibrium, because your body always wants equilibrium. It doesn't want to be out there or down there. It wants to be in balance. So once you give it the right oxygen carbon dioxide balance, you will find that your that anxiety will settle. And I find then very quickly I can be driving around without that, who's going to get me next? Okay, so there you go. Is that something you've been doing for quite a while, your deep breathing?
Well, you've driven in California much.
You need to learn that skill. Okay.
You're able to get cut out.
Yeah, okay. So you've learned how to reduce your adrenaline. Okay. Yeah. Now remember, adrenaline stays in the system for a while, so you might step it down by not letting any more sort of be flowing through the system with the breathing, but if you don't deal with the mental or the mind side of it, then it's going to keep revving up. Okay, because what we think can press that adrenaline button. Okay, so this is why we're looking at both reducing the physical reaction to the stress as well as changing the source of stress, because it's how we view that event that is going to create more stress or return to that mode. Right? How often you think, I've got over that one, you go and sit somewhere and you start thinking about it and it's back again. You can feel yourself revving up. Okay. One good thing about when you do your breathing and the adrenaline settles, the body produces a lot of other chemicals too, and it will bring the heart rate down, it will settle blood pressure or the tension in the system, right? The muscles will start to relax again. So it is a very powerful tool, and I find it's a tool that generally has been underestimated by the medical profession. Although they have recommended it, I know in Australia what doctors used to say, people with panic attacks get a paper bag, brown paper bag, blow in and out. I don't know if anyone here has heard of that. Because what it does, it evens out the carbon dioxide oxygen factor. Okay, when you overbreathe and it's like blowing up a balloon and you're breathing in, only out a short breath. In a deep breath, out a short breath. And it's putting in too much oxygen. The first signs of too much oxygen is usually a bit of tingling, either fingers, around the mouth. You might get a bit of blueness around the mouth, and your head gets a bit light. And if you've ever blown up a balloon or a mattress or something, you find you get really lightheaded and you get a bit tingly. Well, that's too much oxygen. Right? Then we stop blowing up and breathe normally. But when you're stressed and you're doing it, you don't know you're doing it. It's very subtle. It's just a subtle breathing technique. Now, when you don't have enough carbon dioxide, the tissues in your chest and your body start to spasm because carbon dioxide reacts like a natural Ventolin. Okay, so why do doctors give out Ventolin, or what is Ventolin for? Do you know?
Asthma.
Asthma. And what's happening in an asthma attack? the chest is closing over, the tissues or the lungs feel like they can't breathe, and it opens the airways. Well, carbon dioxide in the right balance keeps your airways open. So anyone who's had a panic attack, they've actually had too much oxygen, not enough carbon dioxide. So a simple technique of just holding the breath, counting to, say, to 5, and then breathing evenly and counting. They find the best breath is about, they say 15 to 16 breaths a minute, and that's to the count of about 4 in, 3 or 4 in, 3 or 4 out. And one of the things when people get stressed, I say just sit and count. Slowly slow yourself down, and it settles. Right? So it's a simple breathing technique. But if they think something bad again or think the stress, then the adrenaline's on again and you've got to do your breathing. So this is why we look at changing both of those areas. Okay. Any questions at the moment? Yes.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Why do you not include the emotional?
Well, we'll come to that, because what we're going to look at then, where do emotions come from? Because the mind is the driving force behind everything. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have a look at mind and emotions as part of this, because you're right. If you're on stress is very high when you're running on emotions. Yeah, it's and you'll find anyone who's stressed, usually there's a major emotional component, and that comes back to the way we think and how we're responding. Okay. Anyone else have a? Okay. Because what I'm going to do is put another little model up here that I really find helpful and people find helpful. Is it's like a roadmap. We need roadmaps. So we're here in the present. This obviously is the past. And here we've got our future. Okay. Now what you do with wherever you're at in the present is important, because the past is actually gone, hasn't it? It's been and gone. The future does not yet exist. Okay. But where do a lot of people live? They're in the present physically, but yeah, so you're in the past or the future. Okay, so when you look at the past, because we're looking at, say, there's 0 years and then we've grown from there, prior to that, even when you are being carried by your mother, there is something happening, because you're attached to your mother and she has emotions and feelings, and if she doesn't have good health habits or she's in a stressful environment, you can be born with a stress factor. Okay, and as much as parents don't necessarily deliberately do these things, this is what can happen. The first 2 years of life, say these 2 years approximately, and you know, we talk about children, we talk about the terrible twos, right? We get to the terrible twos because at about that age, children start to intellectually develop and start to think and question and start to think for themselves and try and make sense of the world. But up to that time, the brain is a sponge that absorbs. So when you were a baby and your sponge was absorbing, what was it absorbing? You know, what was around you? Right? Everything. It's a pretty, yeah. And up.
That's difficult.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. And this is the fastest learning period. I think it's up to about 5, where we are. It's like we fast track. Because you look what you do, you walk, you talk, what do you learn? It's huge. We program emotions, we do all sorts of things. Then after that, it does slow down as we get older. The learning, the ability or the knowledge factor slows down. But in those 2 years, while you're absorbing, your attachment to your caregiver, the person who feeds you, and they're finding now in research that if the parent is an anxious parent, for example, and feeds the child from that first feeding, the child is already viewing the world and relationships as an anxious environment. If the parent is an angry person, then the child is already seeing the world and relationships as hostile. Okay? If the parent is a well-balanced parent or copes well, then that's how the child views the world. So we already have a programming that is built on. About 50% of your brain is wired with habits, your character, your personality trait when you're born, and that development started fairly early in fetal development, where those things have been wired. Then the other approximately 50% develops as we grow. We learn and we grow, and we take that 50% that we're born with and we develop it. in a direction. Therefore, we've got choices. You know, I know we have free will and we can choose whether we want to be like that or be like this. So even though we have personality factors and we are all different personalities, it always amazes me how you can have billions and billions of people and there's not one person exactly the same. Even twins have differences. It's a pretty amazing thing. So when you look at this, we then collect things along the way until we're in the present moment. And these can be good and bad experiences. During this 2-year period here, your core, what I call core beliefs or values, are established. So what you absorb in this time is like a foundation for what you believe and how you're going to deal with life. Okay. Now, the good news is, as long as you know what the problem is, if you've learnt the wrong thing, you can change it. Okay. So anything can be changed. We just have to know what it is. And because here it's autopilot, you don't stop, prior to 2 and go, oh, I don't like the way mum and dad talk to each other. You just observe it, model it, take it in. Okay. So now you come up here into the present and you've got all this programming here. I call it our baggage. This is the baggage compartment that we bring with us. Okay, so we can have a lot of baggage and we bring it into the present. And if we're not careful, we are living the past in the present. Right? Now, we all do that sometimes, and it's not about getting rid of all of the past, it's how we deal with it in the present that's important. Now, this is where one of the mental emotional disorders stems from, because if you've got lots of things here that weren't happy and you haven't resolved them, you're going to be in the present, but you're going to feel very depressed. This is where our depression comes from. Okay, so if you're not careful here, you've got depression. Now, if you're in the present and you've been carrying a lot of this stuff, and I know I was brought up to be a worrywart, and I was brought up to fear. One of my core beliefs was what people think. Right? So, and I would then view life through, what will they think? They might not like me. They mightn't like the way I look. And my life was driven by that one particular fear value. All right, so what's wrong with that? Why is that a problem, do you think? What problems might I have had in doing that?
It pulled you back.
It pulled me back, it did. Because I lost confidence, I would constantly compare things. I found it difficult to know what to wear to go to an event. So-and-so mightn't like that, it's too bright, not good enough, right? So you actually then guide your life by that fear.
Your happiness was driven by others. Yes,
by what other people thought. And I've actually worked at it in the present. I've worked out why I got like that and where it came from. And as we go, and we're looking at resolving things and working with the mind, I'll share a bit more of that as an example. But then I'd be in the present and I start to look at the future. Okay, so if I'm in the present and I'm looking at the future, and I'm fearful of what people think, what sort of thoughts might I have for the future? It's where emotions come into it. If I'm fearing in the present, do you think I might fear what's going to happen up there? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So here I have fear thinking. And I call it the what-if syndrome. What if they don't like me? What if I can't cope? What if I make a mistake? What if they laugh at me? Right? Now I'm in the present and I'm worrying about this. So I then get very anxious. So this is where anxiety is. And you'll find the majority of anxiety, unless someone is really threatening you in the present moment, where yes, I'm going to be anxious if someone comes in and is going to hit me, I'll feel anxious. But if I'm worrying about someone coming in and hitting me and it never happens, what am I doing? Setting myself up for stress. Okay, so and that's just a simple example. So part of what I do, because this is where then we've got stress when we look at this side and stress when we go this way. So what you want to do is to be able to live in the present, but if you've got all this stuff back here that was a problem, and then when you stop you're seeing that, and then you stop and you're looking at that, you'll spend a lot of time avoiding being in the present moment. Right, and that is stressful within itself.
That's good for you.
Not good for you, is it? That's exactly right. And yet we can all reminisce. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's how you do it in the present. Somehow we have to resolve the past in the present and put it back where it belongs, not carry it with us, and this is part of the problem. Okay, so if you're in the present then and you're projecting up there, you have to learn to stop here and stop doing that type of thinking. Now, why is it so difficult, do you think, to do that? To stop dragging up the past and stop fearing the future? Why? Habit. Absolutely. We are creatures of habit. Habits are the problem. Right? You have thinking habits, and you have lots of bad thinking habits. I know when mine are kicking in now, but I used to live like that. Right, before I learned this stuff, I'm glad I became a psychologist because I had to treat me first. That was so I had to help me, and I found if I didn't help me, I couldn't help others, because if you don't understand it, you can't share it. So I found out I had lots of bad habits, but I'm here talking about the mind, and the bad habits I'm talking about are your thinking habits. Okay, so if we're not careful, we have bad thinking habits. So do you know what your thoughts are like? Have you ever stopped and listened to this little chatterbox? You ever gone, oh, I can't bear what I'm thinking, or people get like that. Do you ever, okay, you stop and think.
I get frustrated, I can't find the off button.
Okay.
Just turn it off.
It does over time. Okay. So if you come back to what we talked about, because you've got adrenaline running then, adrenaline gets the brain racing so it can act quickly. So if you can pull that back and stop the adrenaline, so we've got a couple of principles here we come back to. One is your breathing. And I have got a handout on that. We'll look at a bit later on. We won't worry about that one at the moment. Breathing to stop the adrenaline. And then we can relax.
16 minutes.
Yeah. Then 2, we want to be able to look at the thinking. So your thoughts. We want to be able to change the way we think. Okay, so that's a tall order. Have you ever tried to change a habit?
That's where you get the ball in your head and the thing.
Why do I keep doing this? Right.
Comes in.
Yeah, it's right. It's stressful changing a habit. So if you're stressed out and you've got adrenaline pumping, you haven't got any chance of doing this one. So this is why there's an order. You've got to calm down. So there's a calming response and rethink. So that's, I guess, the 2 prongs there. So here we calm down and rethink. Important things to do. And when we rethink, we have to think it in what I call a more rational framework. Okay? And that's not always easy to do. Now, there's an interesting saying that I heard that I often remember, and I find little sayings are good in that they help you, sayings from the Bible, things we learn from the Bible, like Proverbs has got some great sayings that can help us with our habits and things like that. But this is one Mark Twain said, and he said, I've been through some terrible things in my life and some of them have actually happened. So how many times have you experienced a disaster and it never really happened? And how often have you stressed about something, worried about something, got there a week later and gone, oh, I thought it was going to be this, this and this, and it wasn't. Okay, so how do you reel that in and keep focused? So this is a key factor. You want to live in the present. You want to be here and now, because when you're not in the present, you miss out on a lot of things. How often do you sit and try and watch a program, or you're listening to someone talk and you think, hang on, I didn't hear what they said, or oh, I've missed that. So this is about how can I be in the present and really stay focused. And that in itself is a skill. If you think of habits, if you have a driving habit, I know in Australia we have a lot of drivers who never use their blinkers, or where I live in Australia. Right? And you'll go to a roundabout or you'll go to somewhere and next thing they're turning into you and often yelling at you, not thinking, I haven't put my blinker on. So if you get someone to change a habit like that, it's not easy to do because it's autopilot. Now, when you first start driving, and I presume a lot of you have driven cars, or when you start anything, what is it like when you first start driving a car?
Stressful.
Stressful. Why? Fun. Oh, that's a positive. Most people find it stressful, I think.
Fear of having an accident.
Okay, fear of having an accident.
Fear of not knowing what to do.
Yes. Yeah, because you've got a big
You better remember how to steer the wheel and on the brake, your clutch.
Yeah. You got to do 20 things at once, don't you?
Yeah.
You know, and you know.
Look all around.
That's
check
right.
Your mirrors and
It's pretty. But now you get in the car, what do?
automatic.
You do it automatically. Well, this is like any habit. Your emotional habits, any of the habits you have are on autopilot. Now, you can change any habit. You just have to know what it is and how to change it. It doesn't matter whether that habit is inherited or it's learned, as long as you know what it is and you know how to change it. Okay? Now, habits are programmed in the brain. Your brain has trillions of cells that connect. Okay? Now, each of those connections actually has a little gap between it, and the chemical messengers in your brain and the electrical impulses go through the cell along the arm and have to jump the gap along to the next cell. So you've got this sort of effect. Now, if you are under a lot of stress, what can happen? The ability for jump the gap is diminished. And this is where we get mental emotional illness that can be stress driven, because your brain, to stay healthy and to be able to be focused in the present, needs to be, as I'd say, a well-oiled machine. Right? If you have a car trying to go up the hill and it's a 6-cylinder car on 4 cylinders, it's going to struggle, okay? So our brain, and interestingly, it takes a lot of stress to get the brain to malfunction in such a way. But often we end up with brain cells that don't have enough of the right chemicals, or cannot use the chemicals, can't pick them up out of the blood supply, or can't put them into action, can't send them across that gap. And when that happens, depression and anxiety are the two of the major symptoms. Right? So one of the things I found with some people, that we actually have to treat the brain chemistry problem, and I don't know if anyone's had that problem, and nowadays you go to the doctor and I think every second person I meet's probably on an antidepressant of some sort or a medication, and certainly sometimes that is needed. I find where I work we have an overuse of medication, but if a person is suicidal and you know that they can't walk out that door because it's so distressing for them, then I'd rather them be on that, because it takes a while for the brain to repair. Okay, but you give your brain the right circumstances. If you didn't give anyone any medication, and I took one of those people in our clinic and I put them into an environment where they're nurtured, they can care for themselves in the right way. They don't have to worry about their food, their finances. They're in an environment that is supportive, but they can be active and they can have sunshine, fresh air, good nutrients. They will actually repair quite quickly. So with the right health principles, the brain stays healthy. But if you put it under enough stress, you get this problem here where the brain can't think. Okay, I don't know how often you found that you're so stressed you can't think of what you have to do. Yeah, the brain can be so stressed it will shut down. You know, I've seen people, it's like scrambling. It's scrambled. It just can't function. Right? And that's indicating that you're in what we call like a burnout phase physically, where your brain is just gone into overload and the whole physical mechanism has had to shut down because it can't cope. That's extreme, and I know I've been near those edges and it's not a very nice place to be. Okay, but I do know with the right health principles, and we're not going to go into all of those today, but with those right principles, there's a lot you can do to keep your brain, as they say, a well-oiled machine. So it's running really well. So one of the things you want to start looking at is brain health. How healthy is my brain? Okay, and to do that, you've got to get rid of the stress, the excess stress factor. And I find a healthy brain, when it's under stress, copes well, fixes the problem, sorts it out, put it where it belongs, and de-stresses. Okay, that's with the right skills and your brain's functioning well. Okay, but to get the brain to function well, it's not just what you're putting in your system, it's being able to reduce the stress. And it doesn't matter if your brain is stressed. If you can learn some basic principles, you can start to reverse the problem. Okay, so that's, I guess, the good news. Has anyone got any questions at the moment or examples of what we're talking about?
Well, I can tell you that there was one time where I was so stressed out, I didn't even know what stress was.
Yeah.
And I kept when I was driving to work, I kept kind of nodding off. I started throwing up.
Yes.
I just felt I couldn't think anymore. And
You were shutting down.
I thought I was dying.
Yes, it feels like that.
And I kept going to the doctors over and over
And
prescribing me nausea pills and this and that. No one knew what was wrong with me until about a year later.
Okay.
And one doctor said, "You're stressed."
it took him a year to work that one out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I figured out what the stress was. And
Good. Well, I think a lot of doctors now are more aware of it, but it comes back to what you're trained to do. My training is to look at stress, illnesses and disorders, but not everyone is. Doctors are trained for different things, so they might not have that insight, but it doesn't mean they can't do other things. But generally, it's a pity that it takes so long. But now I think doctors are referring more on to people who can help you deal with that sort of thing. It sounds like you were having a bit of a panic attack and probably anxiety.
Yes.
And you can get nauseous, throw up, you can't function, you get dehydrated. When you are depressed or anxious, what do you neglect? What don't you do when you're in those states of high stress?
Not thinking.
What was that?
You're not thinking.
You're not thinking, yeah? What else do you do? Physically, what do you stop doing?
Eating. Don't eat as well.
Stop eating properly? Okay. So that means you're not getting enough nutrients.
Not drinking enough.
Not drinking enough fluid, yeah. Now, what happens when you're not drinking enough water? Because the brain has a lot of fluid.
You get dehydrated.
Yeah, and the brain actually, it shrinks. It can shrink. And they found that if you don't drink enough fluid over a long period of time, the brain can actually shrink. So this is why it's important to keep up your fluid content. Okay, because the brain it has a lot of fluid in it, and if it doesn't have enough fluid, or if you're not drinking enough, the body can start recycling the toxins, right? And that means the brain can be toxic as well, and then you feel irritable and can't think straight. Yeah, so the brain, even though it's a physical organism, it's connected to everything. For every thought you have, it sends a message down. Every nerve cell you have in your body, every cell in your body responds to that thought. So a good example with people I work with insomnia, if it's coming towards afternoon, evening, they first thought, oh no, it's coming into, I've got to go to bed. I know I'm not going to sleep. Now, if your brain tells your body it's not going to sleep, it's just told you that, what's going to happen to the body? Stress. Okay, because the body produces chemicals once the sun goes down that helps you to have a good sleep. Melatonin is one of them. So if my brain is saying to every part of my body, I'm not going to sleep, it won't produce the right chemicals. It interferes with the process. And this is the mind-body connection. Okay, if you tell yourself anything, it will stress. If you think, oh, that's terrible, I'm not going to cope with that, you won't, right? So the frame of mind we have is important, and one of the things I do with people who have insomnia is get them to think differently about going to bed and getting their rest, and it works. Yes?
You lose the ability to prioritize the significant things from the insignificant.
Yes, yeah. That's exactly right. And then the insignificant things become highly significant and they don't need to be. Yeah. So then we're overreacting to trivial things. Yeah. And you can probably relate to that at times, if not generally. Okay. There is a handout with this. I don't know if Julie, if you want to. Yes, we can do the next one there. There's a couple. What have you got there? Oh, that was the one I've got on the warning signs of stress. So we'll hand that one out. And it just gives you some symptoms there, because I think it's important. Often we don't know stress has hit. How often, what's wrong with me? And then you stop and go, I'm feeling stressed. Yeah, but you don't know it. Whereas if you've got a list around, you can go, hang on, are these things happening to me? I'm definitely stressed, right? But you will teach yourself about it. Yeah, so I'll take that one if you like while you're giving that one out. And I'll just talk about that one. Okay, so use checklists. Write down your own stress symptoms. If you know that when you're stressed these things happen to you, write them down, because it's going to tell you, it's your little checklist that says, hang on, something's not right here. You know, I've learnt to know my signs, but it took a lot. I'd have people pointing them out to me saying, you're really stressed. I'm going, no, I'm not. And they say, I can tell by the look on your face, or you've lost your sense of humour, or I get all these things back. So I'm learning when I'm stressed, and I've got to monitor that. So self-monitor. Work out when are you stressed and when are you relaxed. You know, most people work in stress mode. I don't know many people that work in relaxation mode. Now, wouldn't it be nice if you could be in relaxed mode to do things? You'd get on better with people, you'd find you'd enjoy people around you, you wouldn't be reacting to them, or you'd deal with it differently. You could sit down at night and just relax and enjoy some peace and enjoy whatever's going on around you. Okay. This second handout, and I've got this in 2 versions because this is one I use at the clinic, so I bought that one as well. And this is living in the present. Where are you living, past, present or future? And that is giving an overview of that. But I've also got a second version of it because when I started doing some work in different church groups, I found that I added in the fact that God is a huge solution to this problem, okay? And when we're focused on the past and the future, we are not with God in the present, and this is what the old devil wants us to do. He wants us to get stuck in the past problem or fear the future. And it's very self-focused. We're very self-absorbed when we're here or we're here, and we can only be in the present moment. So I've done it in 2 ways because you might like to share it with someone, or you might like to add your own notes to some of this. And then on the back there, I've got some different points, what depression is and anxiety, that just explains this little bit here. But certainly any trauma in the past that is not resolved, it sits in the brain, it's programmed in the brain, and the brain layers it. And then it's the foundation, something back here in childhood. How long does it take to traumatise a child, do you think? What do you have to do to make a child traumatised? You were all children once. What traumatised you? What upset you as a child?
Seeing a dead person.
What was that?
At a funeral.
Oh, that's pretty traumatic. But what if an adult says to you, you're a stupid idiot, you don't have a brain in your head, or you're such a bad child, you never do anything right? Okay, now that for a child is traumatic because children take things literally. And I've had so many kids I've worked with as adults who, but my parents told me I was stupid, so I didn't bother. Gave up, you know. So, and they're highly intelligent children. Now, not all kids do this. Some are more resilient. Go, oh, mum's just having a bad day. But you get children who don't. And if they believe back here, for example, that they're a bad child, that they're no good, and they always mess up, and I've heard parents say some awful things to kids, then they're going to believe this. So whenever they interpret life, for example, if you're told you're stupid, you start discounting any intelligence you have. Or if someone says, oh, that was a good thing or a bright thing to do, go, oh, they're just saying that. You know, they don't really mean it. Or if you don't think you're very worthy, or you don't like the way you look because you've been told, oh, you know, you're an ugly child, and I've heard that sort of thing. And these are extremes, but then you grow up believing it, so you filter out any information that will tell you otherwise. So your beliefs back here have to change, and the only way you know, I find, is how you react in the present will tell you what this is connected to. What you think in the present is a reflection of all that's gone on back here, okay? So if you want to know what this is, start listening to that chatterbox up there, because that is giving you messages, okay? And that's that other one there. Now what we'll do, we're going to have a bit of a break and just have a...
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, you can. Mm-hmm.
You've worked in clinics.
Yes.
You've come across people from all walks of life.
I have, yes.
Is there much suicide in your country?
Sorry, what was that?
Is there much suicide in your country?
In Western countries, generally, there's a very, very high suicide rate, and it varies between countries. I know Australia's, I think, probably about 3rd or 4th on the list. America's pretty high, particularly with youth and with young males. There's a very high suicide rate. Yeah, because... Well, you have a look at what we're programmed with. What are kids generally, and I'm not saying your children are, but what is the general run-of-the-mill programming? And I know we have a lot of Americanisation in Australia. A lot of what you do here goes straight down there and kids embrace it. So what is it they're being programmed with, do you think?
Media.
Media? Music? Listen to some of the music. Oh.
I don't even call it music.
I grew up with this.
Yeah, their peers. Also, what about video games? Right, you have a look. They're gross. You have a look at what they're learning. Violence, they're learning death. And some of the kids that do some of these awful things, which is very sad, it's because they've decided, well, they've acted it out so often they want to see what it's like in real life. Right, yes.
But it's also what they are not learning.
Yeah.
The satisfaction of jobs accomplished.
Yes.
Physical jobs, practical home duties.
Yes. They don't have a work
with
ethic.
Nature. These are very, very handicapping.
Absolutely.
As well.
And interestingly, they find, particularly with teenagers, when you take them out of that environment and you put them in an environment where you show them respect and love and you give them work values and give them a purpose, it transforms them.
Yeah. Amen.
Because what happens, their belief system that was established here through the media and through all this stuff is now being disengaged, and the brain is learning a new process. You're putting in new information. So the brain is wired. Now, fortunately, there is what we call a use it or lose it principle. When you learn a habit, it's wired into the brain. It's like a freeway. Every time you do that thing, it reinforces. So if it's traumatic, it's reinforced very rapidly, okay? And what happens if you stop using that pathway or that highway, those cells start to die out and the body eliminates them. Through the normal elimination system, right? So what happens, a habit you're not using, it's like a muscle in an arm. If you're a bodybuilder, you stop bodybuilding and the muscle weakens. You pick it up again, it strengthens, and it's the same with a habit, okay? Now, interestingly, there's always a residue of that habit left, even though you're not using it. And this is interesting because this means if you're not careful, if something happens, you pick it up again. Yeah. You know, and once you flex the muscle, once you flex the habit, it rebuilds, right? And it'll build fairly quickly because it already knows what it is, but it'll also diminish quickly too. Okay, so there's a lot you can do. This is that use it or lose it. If you starve the thoughts, starve a habit, it will stop growing and it will start diminishing. But if you take a habit away, you've got to put a new one in its place.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't leave the brain empty. You have to give it something more to focus on. So this is where, like on an individual level, I help people identify what is happening here in the present, where is their mind focusing, what is it that they keep dwelling on here and fearing here, bring them back and let's look at, okay, now what do you want to change, and this is how you change it. Okay, so this is what we're doing. So after the break, what I'll do is put up another model then that works with the mind, the emotions and what we do to go, okay, well, how do I change it? You know, and understand, because there is a relationship that has been observed, certainly in psychology, but I believe when you read a lot of enlightened work and you look at the Bible, it's that relationship that we need to work with.
Well, we're back. That's
round two.
Round two. Boy, I'm learning a lot again, and I don't think we ever stop learning.
True.
And that's a good thing.
It's good.
Yeah. And I just want to share from personal experience. I have been on medications for mind disorder, and I have also, before I even realized what was going on, I had migraines that were landing me in the ER repetitively. Could not understand why these were coming up all of a sudden for like a 2-year period in my life, and I just kept getting hauled off to ER over and over again. And looking back, I know it was stress because I was really stressed at that time. So I'm glad Jenny's here. I wanted to mention 2 books that Jenny advocates highly. And these are really good books that you will want and benefit from reading. The first one is Don Colbert, medical doctor, MD, Don Colbert. It's called Deadly Emotions. Understand the mind-body-spirit connection that can heal or destroy you. He goes through physiologically how an emotion actually makes you sick. He explains it on a cellular level so that you can see and understand how it actually makes you sick, your emotions. And it's a very interesting book. It's from a Christian perspective. He is a Christian. And The other one is Dr. Caroline Leaf, like leaves on trees. Leaf, Caroline. And it's called Who Switched Off My Brain? Controlling Toxic Thoughts and Emotions. And this is also a very small book, very to the point and very effective little book. And she doesn't go into, the mechanics of how it affects your body per se, but she certainly
she works very much on the mind, emotions, and what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And the last, I think, 5 or 6 chapters give a lot of what I'm saying here this afternoon, and particularly this next segment. She reinforces it and gives you ways to detox the thinking, which is in line with what I do here. So
look around. If you're on an internet, you can find these used or cheaply. If you go to Amazon and places like that, you can pick them up pretty easily.
There's also a good Christian website, I think it's Christian Living Today or something. I'll find it and give it to Julie and John, and then if you want to get that, and they do them very cheaply. I think one is $10, one $15 US with no postal charge, and they do it as an outreach service. So I'll find that and give it to you, so if anyone wants that information. I think I can't remember. What I'll do is find that out, and I'll do that during the week and get the information to you where I can, and John and Julie will have it. And I just didn't think to bring it with me, but it's a very good website. They like to get information out to people, and those 2 books really to me are the nutshell of what we need to do, because there's all these books, what do you do and where do you find the information? So having some key books and I've given those books to people I work with at the clinic and anyone, both Christian and non-Christian, and they find them totally appropriate and want a copy so they can actually take it with them to read and to work with. So I think that's important. Now, I just want to go over a couple of things with the mind. With your mind, it's because I think probably most of you work on computers. If not, you've lived in an office with filing cabinets and files and all that sort of thing. Well, that's what the mind is like. And the mind needs to have order. It needs to have its filing cabinet in order. And it has lots of files and filing cabinets there. And often when you're not well, all these files are out of order and not filed properly or lying around somewhere. And it's a bit like a computer. You can actually go in and reorganise your files. Or you go onto a computer and you're doing a document, you do the spell check and it corrects that word throughout the whole document. And I find when you're working with the mind, on the present conscious level, when you put in some new information, it goes into the subconscious. The subconscious doesn't know the difference between fact and fiction, truth and lies. It accepts it, it uses it, and the conscious mind hates suffering. So the subconscious will take it and start resorting the files. Right? So when you want to learn that new habit, when you put the answer to the problem in, what it can do is take the solution and not just solve the present problem, but it actually will do a domino effect of clicking back and taking lots of things that have happened where that was a problem and put it in perspective. Okay, the brain is a self-healing mechanism. I believe the body is too. So once you give it the truth and the present mind and you understand something, it's like click, click, click. Oh, no wonder that happened. No wonder I was like that. Oh, that feels much better. Okay, so you don't have to go in there and find every little thing and change it. Once you detect the core and you correct the core, it will then start to change a lot of things. It's very, very good the way it works. Julie?
How do you find the core?
In the present, what you believe and what you think is the core, because our thinking is driven by our beliefs. Our beliefs come from back here. And every event we have colours our belief system, our values, our attitudes. So if I want to know what a person's like, there's lots of ways. Just listening to the way they talk tells me what they believe. Right? If, for example, if you're talking to someone who's a bit of a perfectionist, and you go, oh, that's good. And they go, oh, no, look, I've got a mistake here and this isn't right and I didn't do that and I forgot that. And I go, but hang on, I think that's really good. Oh, no, it's not that good. And you know that person has a situation where their belief system is telling them it's not good enough, when in actual fact they would have done an excellent job. Okay, and in most people, how often do you see all those mistakes? You don't. And there might be one little error here or there. But that person sees it as a glaring problem because that's the belief. Now, if I'm hearing that, I know that person has a perfectionist belief system, and that means they set themselves up to either have to achieve the highest standard possible every time or not do anything at all because they can't achieve it, therefore they just give up. All right? So then we can look, where does that belief come from? Why do you think you have to have it like that all the time? And often then they go, oh, well, when I was here, I remember, and the jigsaw starts to fit into place. And it's like everything starts to make sense. The brain starts to put it together. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's not like you have to be Einstein and take everything out and really work with it. Once you find a core problem in the present, and that's what we're going to look at, how do you do that and what is the mind doing, it will start to go back and heal the problem and sort it. And this is where I know as a Christian also that having God in my life, he helps me to know what to look on. He helps the healing process. You know, if we want to know and we're prayerful, when we pray and ask, we'll be shown. Right? So this is where if you're a praying person, you can go and ask the Lord, show me what I need to change. Right? You don't have to say, oh, drag up the past so I'm feeling miserable. It's because the past is the present at this point of time. Okay? And it works very well. So, but stress also is to do with emotions. Okay, so when your emotions are running riot or running high or they're very disturbed, that is a high stress state. Okay, and if you think of stress, you have to equate it with your emotional content. Okay, before I rub that out, the other thing was I did have a relaxation with breathing handout that you have, and that will give you reinforce doing the breathing, because remember you need to calm the mind, calm the body to be able to do it. It's on the back of one of your handouts. We did them back to back, and that's just looking at what I'd said about stress and relaxation breathing are related. It gives you the breathing rate and what it does, and a couple little the diaphragm breathing technique at the bottom. Okay, so this is what I've done is as you go, you're getting handouts that are looking at the principles that you can take and do. And this might be the first step for you. You might think, no, I want to really bring my adrenaline level down. And that's powerful if you do that. Okay. I have a very good little reading, or a couple of readings here that I think put things in perspective when you're looking at the brain. And this is, you might have heard this before, I don't know, because a lot of things go around on the internet worldwide. And it says, in the fables of the North American indigenous peoples, the story is told of an old Cherokee Indian who one evening told his grandson about a battle that was going on inside himself. He said, "My son, it is between two wolves. One is evil, anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority and ego. The other is good, joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion and faith." The grandson thought about for a minute and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf wins?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one I feed." So what are you feeding with your mind? Yeah, and I thought it is literally, this is what you have to do, is start feeding the mind with the good things, the right things, and stop feeding it with the bad things. The more we dwell on the past, the bad, the problem, the depression, it grows. Okay? The more you dwell on the answer, the solution, the positives in things, the more it grows the other way, the more the healing occurs. Now, on the other hand, if you actually have a physical problem with the mind, that needs to be corrected, because then it's hard to do that focus. Right? And here I'm talking to a group of people who are, I presume, quite well functioning, and your minds are in order and you can do this. But if you know someone who is suffering depression, anxiety and really not coping with life at all, then maybe they need help to get their mind in order. And that means it needs feeding, it needs sorting out. And it doesn't have to be with medication and doctors' things. And maybe John, I know John's got information, Dr. Clark here, he can help with that. So maybe that's something you can find out more about. Now, what I want to do is take this off. And we're going to put up another model here. Right. Now, what I want to look at is the relationship between certainly mind and emotions. Okay. So I don't need these while I'm doing that. Here we go. So we start here with our beliefs. Right, and then we have our thoughts. Now, your beliefs and your thoughts are connected. Because as I said, what you believe, and your beliefs are made up of values, attitudes, of all the programming you've had over the years makes up that belief system, okay? That feeds the thinking. It's like having the background. In a computer, you've got all the background stuff with viruses and all that going. Your beliefs are a bit like that. They sit at the back there and they are colouring what you're doing and what you're thinking. So if you start listening to what you think, you'll start to detect what you truly believe. And I know someone might already be doing that, going, oh, no wonder that's why I think that way. Okay? Now, from that stems your feelings. Okay, so if I ask you to feel sad, what do you have to do to feel sad? Think of something sad. Okay, so if you're a happy person, you're thinking happy thoughts. If you are a depressed person, I guarantee they're not thinking happy thoughts. You know, if you've had a depressed time, you're thinking all the miserable thoughts you can. Okay, so what you need to do is remember that if I'm feeling this way, then I must be thinking that way. Okay, then if we go from there, if you're feeling sad enough, what happens with your behaviours? What might happen to you? I know, if not happy, no. But if you're sad enough, what do? You can cry. Okay, that might be the outcome. What if you are feeling really angry? What sort of thoughts are you having if you're feeling angry? You don't want to think about it, do you? Angry thoughts. Okay. So if you're feeling angry, then what are you thinking? How dare they do that to me? What did they do that for? They're just making my life miserable. Okay. You're having lots of angry thoughts, usually. And then if you are feeling angry enough, what might you do?
Lose your friends.
Yeah, lose your friends. Use the mouth. Foot in mouth disease, I call it. Start paying out. Or people don't like angry people, do they? How often, if you have an angry person, do you want to go near them? No, you avoid them. Okay, so, and if someone's angry then and people are avoiding them, how does that make them feel?
Keep it angry.
Worse, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. So, but you do get feedback loops, because when you have that first sad thought and you notice you feel sad, what you can do is it feeds back and you think about it even more. Anger's a good one. So you might be in the supermarket, for example, and you're in line and you might be in a bit of a hurry and someone snips in the line there in front of you, and I'm sure some of you have had that experience. It's a worldwide phenomenon, I'd say. And that person slips in, so what do you think? Oh, you know, I was before them, right? And then you might think, how dare they do that?
You say, how rude.
How rude. Don't they know that I'm in the line here? You know, all of this is often very self-oriented. So you start winding up. You know, they should go to the back of the line. Why are they doing this? You know, I've only got 4 items and they've got 10, right? You start revving it up, and as you do that, what happens to the intensity of that feeling? Every time you have the thought, revs it up a notch, okay? Then, what do? If you're in the supermarket and that happens to you, what do?
You have to say something.
You say something, okay?
That's not nice.
That's not nice. How many of you give the look? Right, you give them a good look. And you go, oh, they should know what I'm thinking, okay? This is what we do, but you're getting more and more. So what happens as you feel more frustrated, you then act it out. Open the mouth or do a non-verbal that will let them know. They should know I'm not happy about this, okay? But if you're a healthy person and someone jumps in front of you in the queue, what might you do about it? If you don't get angry and frustrated with it, what might you do? What can you do that's a healthier thing? How can you think about it differently? What can you say to yourself?
That's okay.
It's okay. Well, you got to believe it. If it's not okay, you've got to really think it through.
Yeah.
They must have a real emergency.
They're okay. You might start to interpret it differently. You might start to think, oh, maybe they're really in.
Stressed out about
Yes.
their child or something.
Yes. Yeah. You start to look at why they're doing it, okay? Or you might think, well, they're just a very rude person, right? You don't like their behaviours.
But you don't know.
You don't know unless you tap them on the shoulder.
Think the best until you find out otherwise.
Yes. I like to go down that track. If not, I rev it up. If not, I start to get stressed about it. Okay, all because I went to the supermarket and that person jumped in. Okay, and that's only one little event in the day. And then you go to the car park, you're about to pull in and someone shoots in front of you. Okay, so all these things are sent to try us out. So you don't need major stresses to press the button. Okay, you get home and you run out of batteries for your torch, or something's not working, or you forgot to get that thing at the supermarket you need for tea tonight. And what do? Beat yourself up. Get annoyed or blame something or someone. So we have these ways we think and how we act and how we behave. So part of this is here. We have to start looking then, because what we do, we actually jump onto the feelings. Okay, we have a very feeling society, and I find culturally, different cultures have run different emotionally. I find Australians are a lot different. They're not as emotional in their presentation as Americans. And I find Australians watch a lot of like this, if they watch a sitcom, or they're watching, now we've got the cable TVs over there, they watch some of the news channels and that, and there's really hyped up people talking over each other and really excited. And in Australia, I guess because we have the English influence, it's a little bit more demure in that sense. So we notice a difference. I find like the Mediterranean cultures are much more exciting and excitable or intense in their feelings than when you go to Britain. It's got more the stiff upper lip approach. Yeah. So we have different cultures do instill different feelings the way that they function. Some of that's the personality, some of it is the way we learn, how we learn to deal with those things. So it's doing what I call a feelings check sometimes. If you're feeling stressed, you might notice, I'm getting stressed here. Can you look at, well, hang on, I'm feeling quite upset because that person today said they'd ring and they didn't ring me. And it's sitting there in the background and you're not dealing with it. Now you have to learn to deal with these things. Okay, and what I encourage people to do is not go, oh, that's trivial, I should get over it. You have to think it through and put it to rest. If not, it'll keep popping up. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I'm sure you've all found that. You think, oh, I thought I sorted that. Back it comes, right? And when you pick it up again, that program in the brain is building. And you'll find you have patterns of thinking that you work with, and we're going to look at some of those as well. So let's have a look here with your beliefs and your thoughts. We're going to have a look at how it can be expressed. So there are two modes we can work in. Let's get this pen right. We can be a rational thinker, or we can be an irrational. So if I say someone's quite rational, what am I saying? What sort of thinker are you if you're a rational person?
Level-headed.
Level-headed? Think it through, think logically. Calmer, sequence. Yep, able to think through things and solve problems and sort them out. Okay, 2 and 2 equals 4. Okay, if you have an irrational thinker, what is their thinking like?
Not good.
All mixed up.
What was that?
All mixed up.
All mixed up?
Oh, not good.
Not good. That's right. Okay. Anyone else? If it's irrational?
Quick to jump to the wrong conclusion.
Okay, we start getting 2 and 2 equals 5 instead of 4. We start making decisions based on our feelings, for example. You'll find irrational people do things. Okay, but you'll find your thinking is often mixed, it's overloaded, often the brain is racing when you're irrational, but it can be more subtle. So how do you know if you're thinking irrationally?
Get oneself in trouble.
You do if you think that way all the time. How do you know when you're being irrational?
No.
That's a hard one, isn't it? Yeah.
Your circle of friends and your trusted people around you.
Yes, might give you some feedback. Yeah, okay. They say, oh, something wrong with you. No, I'm fine. You know you're not. We often do that, don't we? Yeah. So if you're irrational, it can be very subtle, but I find usually when it's irrational, there's a feeling element behind it. So sometimes I pick it up with me on the more subtle level when I know, feeling annoyed about that. I must be thinking, a bit in those terms. And then when I check it out, there's subtle thinking. And I'm getting to know on a subtle level, because I've been doing this for a while, when it's the subtle level of irrationality. Right? But usually when someone comes up to you and they're talking in emotions, I'm trying to do it and it's not working, I'm really frustrated, they're thinking in terms of, well, this isn't going to work and I've tried and it's all going wrong and there must be something wrong with me, and it's irrational. Right? Because really, we can be realistic. Rational people are realistic. Like, you can make a mistake, and if you're a rational person, you own the mistake, you know it's there, you work with it. Okay? If you're an irrational person, you'll make a mistake, you go, oh, that wasn't my fault, someone else is to blame, or, I didn't do it. We go into defence mode.
Or this means I'm a failure.
That's right. Often there's a lot of self-downing, irrational people. They often lack confidence because a lot of their self-talk is very self-focused, or it's focused in the past and the future. A lot of people irrationally, because of that happened in the past, it's going to happen again, or their thinking is coloured by the past or the fears of the future, from that model we talked about. Okay, when you work in the present, a rational person has to be in the present. And that means if something triggers them, their mind can take a chunk and deal with it and focus back in the present. So how do you know you're living in the present? That's where God wants us to live. How do you know you're there?
Rational.
Well, you are more rational, yeah. What is it like when you are living in the present and you're focused and you're in the presence of God, for example? Peace. Yeah, you feel at peace, don't you? You feel everything settled. There can be chaos around you, but you're feeling settled. I use a centred, yes, centred, and you actually feel physically centred. Yes. I find when you're not and you're in chaos, you're caught out there. You can feel yourself caught out there, and you feel totally unfocused. And you're rushing here and you're rushing there, or you get caught in this and caught in that, and you can't focus in the present. So there is a difference. So some of it's subtle, but for a lot of people, you can notice a marked difference. So start working out, am I in the present moment? Yes.
Oftentimes it's when people have unrealistic expectations of others or themselves.
Okay, so let's come over here.
Maybe that's another part.
It is another part. So over here we have expectations. It's in this area here we make choices. Okay, so our expectations, our choices are here, and our interpretation of events is based in the mind. Oh, what have we got here? Okay, so this is all happening up here, but if our emotions are running right and we're feeling angry, our interpretation is coloured. The choices become limited because you feel boxed in. Often angry people feel boxed in. And your expectations are unrealistic because you're angry and you want something done about it. And, someone's going to pay for this. It's an unrealistic thing. So here, I guess, we have realistic expectations on this side, and on here we can have their unrealistic expectations. Okay. And it doesn't take much to do this. I can be having a very calm, focused, rational day, and I get a phone call that someone is upset about something or wants me to go into work and do something, and I can feel myself go into chaos. I can feel the emotions rising, the adrenaline pumping, and I go, oh no, how am I going to do that? I'm going all over the place. So I'm learning to stop, take a few deep breaths, step back. Now, do I really need to do that? How bad is it? So you start looking at a more rational, realistic framework. Yeah, because you will never ever not think. The brain is always thinking, okay? When you're at peace and you're calm, you are still thinking. You are consciously aware of what's going on. At night, when you shut down the conscious mind, your subconscious is much more active than it is when you're conscious. If you were wired up to a machine that measures the brainwave patterns of the subconscious brain, you will find it's highly active. It's all over the place at night. Right? And when you are stressed and that brain is in chaos, when the conscious mind that keeps a lid on it shuts down, it starts playing up. And you end up with dreams, chaos, nightmares, wake up going, God, I slept, but I feel terrible. Right? Because your subconscious has been doing overtime because you've been working in this irrational mode. Your feelings are very intense. You've got adrenaline pumping. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah. It does, doesn't it? Okay, so if you want to change anything, if you want to change the way you feel and want to change the way you behave, you have to start up here. This is the key to the door. The key to change. It has to be here, in this area here. Okay, but what do? We often try and change the way we feel. Oh, I wish I didn't feel like that. You know, we'll try and distract ourselves, do things, but we don't change the source, because how many people know the source? You know, we're not taught these things, very sadly. I think schools need to educate children in all of this, understanding how the mind works, how the brain works, how to look after, how to have a healthy mind, instead of putting them in front of, TVs and boxes and games and, programming the brain with such distortions. It's horrible.
The thoughts I had about feelings, just generally from my own experience, is that they're good for two things.
Yes.
One is to enjoy the results of good choices.
Yes.
The other one is to get our attention to go back and rethink choices and beliefs.
Yes. This area here is what I call the barometer. Okay, so our barometer gauges, it's a gauge that tells us when things are right and wrong, which is exactly what you've described. So if we listen to this, and it's not about getting rid of feelings, it's about understanding them and knowing what's the feeling I'm having, because we are created with feelings. I mean, don't we want joy and happiness, and instead we're sort of going the wrong way. I want to come back and go the right way. And I love feelings when they're good, but when they're not so good, I'm like everyone else. You just want to get rid of them, and you'll do anything. This is why people will comfort eat. This is what addictions is about. This is why people dissociate. Let's shut it down. I can't cope with it. And if a child has trauma or something is unresolved, then to deal with it, they'll put a lid on it and lock it in, but they haven't resolved it. So until they do that, they can't, the feelings can get worse and worse as time goes by. Okay. Any questions with that at the moment? Okay, it's fairly, because in understanding the process, so it comes back to how you're going to change, and that's why I found that reading was very, very good, because it gave you that principle of, as it says, what one are you feeding? Which one are you feeding? So if you're feeding the good side or the bad side, which is located in the brain, in the thinking, and it does work, and a lot of people have had bad feelings and don't know why, but they think, no, and I find this, if I get up in the morning and I'm feeling depressed, and that can happen, there's no reason why. I think, what's wrong? And it could be physiology, it could be a dream I've had, it could be I'm not sleeping enough or whatever. If I feed that feeling, if I go, oh, this is terrible, I'll have another depressed day, this will be awful, how am I going to end up? Not good. You're going to feed it. You're going to feed it, we want to starve it. So I go, okay, accept the feeling. I'm feeling that way, but I don't have to feed it. I'm going to still get on with my day. I might do something a bit nicer today to look after me, which means I might have a little walk at the end of the day, or go for a swim, or sit in nature, or take it easy. Maybe something I was going to do that was a bit stressful I might leave alone and think, no, look after me. And I find as I do that and get on with things, it dissipates. Right? So it's very powerful. It's that orientation of the mind. Okay, so this is what you want to learn to do. Now, it's not easy, and sometimes you might try and do this and it's not working. You go, oh, I'm still feeling annoyed or angry or upset. I find getting it out of your head, writing it down, Put it on paper. Write yourself a letter, write someone else a letter, write down the points. And I found that I've had things at home because it's the people you love and are married to and live with in your family, it's the hardest to work with because it's so emotionally connected. And I found at home with my own husband, there's lots of things that will trigger me. And sometimes I react and I don't like it, and I've learnt to go and own it and talk to him and say, I'm sorry I reacted, even if he starts it.
That's right.
And I find he then owns it, which is great. And so I'm learning. I don't have to be on the defence mode. But I found sometimes if I write down, what did he do? What happened? What was I feeling? What was I thinking? And identify as much of that as I can. And, oh, no wonder I'm upset. I step back and look at it and I'm amazed at what I see. Okay, and then I think, this is the belief. This is why I'm reacting. Right, so you've got to own your reactions instead of blaming, right? And you have to then do something with it. And if you can't work it out, it doesn't matter half the time, but the fact you've got it out of there and you go, no. I find, again, as a Christian, I'll pray about it and often I get answers, or I open a book and there's an answer for me. But just writing it down, getting out of your headspace is very powerful in being able to make sense of it and get it back into a more realistic framework. Okay, because often we expect things of others and they have no idea how often you've gone, but I thought you were going to, they go, what are you talking about? And in your headspace, you knew that's what you wanted, but you didn't communicate it well, or they didn't understand it. There's a communication problem. Okay, so it's learning to own it. And we've been, I know in our culture, and probably the same here, I was brought up to be defensive, not to resolve, to protect myself. That it's either not my fault or, that I don't have to deal with it. Yes.
Is it important to understand why you did something that you know was wrong before you come say, I know I just was a jerk.
Yes.
I don't know why, but I know I was a jerk.
Yeah.
Do you have to understand why before you would go to that person and say, I'm sorry I acted that way. I'm just, I wasn't right. Please forgive me, and I want to do better next time.
Okay. I think it can work either way.
Okay.
Sometimes
you will understand
if it's too emotionally loaded, sometimes you've got to step back and think it through. But sometimes it's like, oh no, I just need to tell that person, and you'll do it, and then you'll go away and think about it and go, oh, why did I do that?
So it may just
it can work either way.
On the circumstances.
Yes, yeah. But certainly, if the emotions that you're feeling that you haven't yet dealt with up here and moved around, if they're intense and you can damage someone. And it doesn't take much. All it takes is one tone of voice to show someone you're not happy with them. Okay. So if I know I'm in that mode and I'm learning to know my modes, I will step back and try. Then I don't have to apologise. And you can go to a person and say, look, I was really upset about the way you did or what you did, and talk to them about it after you've debriefed it. Right, because then you don't go in with what I call a loaded gun that's going to rip the head off literally or have a go at them. Yeah, do more damage. Because when you do damage, you've got to go and mop it up. If not, that becomes the trauma that is backlogged in the past if you don't deal with it.
Yes.
Right, so then we keep adding on. Okay. Now, I find when you do this and you do it in the present moment, you identify why you're feeling that way. For example, if you've felt sad a lot of your life and you start to see in the present why, it opens the door for whatever's back there to come up. When you deal with it in the present, it opens for the next layer to come up. And the mind will do that. When your conscious mind feels safe and it's got a tool to work with, it will allow a problem you've stuck away to come up because it now has a way of processing it. Right? I'm really anti the therapy that says we've got to get you in touch with your emotions. We've got to get you in touch with the problem. You traumatise the person, okay? But if you give someone the tools, they become their own therapist because they know what to do, and their mind will then allow them to retrieve things they want to sort out. And it might be to make amends with a family member or change something. It might be a memory of something that happened back there that they can't do anything about now, but they can change the way they think about it.
Yes.
Put it to rest. Yeah, and it's a work in progress. Okay, and I find when you have the tools, you do it at your own pace, and you will get caught in things at times. And I found that with anger. I just felt I wanted to be angry. You know, I was feeling angry with my husband, for example. I just want to be angry, but I thought I'm not going to go and take it out on him. If I want to storm around the house all day while he's out, fine. But I'm not to do it to him. It's hard work. Then in the end, I decided I didn't like being angry, and I want to get rid of it as quickly as I can. But we are very attached to some of our emotions, right? So we have to learn to let go of that attachment. Okay. So the effort we put in is powerful. So I just
Now,
go on.
John brought up the other day that 5 minutes of anger takes effect on you for 5 hours.
Absolutely.
What happens when you're storming around the house all day angry?
Oh, well, I'm just prolonging the agony. And imagine my blood pressure, my adrenaline,
You might be damaged for 6 months.
Absolutely.
Dr. Culver goes right in.
Talks that one. Yeah, that's where those books are great. Yeah,
Just
yeah.
thought we'd chat
I know.
about that
I think
little
about that now and think, oh, what's happening to me? So that's a good point. Okay, so, I mean, how many of you have had severe health problems that you're having to deal with? Yeah, I know I can relate to that, and I'm sure there's others here. And what has been the source of it? If it's stress, it has to be emotional stress, and that, you know, as Dr. Clark's pointed out, that it is, the effect on the system is so profound. Yet what do positive emotions do? I don't know if you've looked at that one. Endorphins, yeah, they're what they call the happy hormones. Our body has a system that when we are happy, it feeds the brain. Endorphins, they say, are several hundred times more powerful than morphine in their effect. Right? They have the ability to reduce physical pain, reduce emotional pain, and bring about a sense of well-being. The brain operates brilliantly when there are endorphins present. Right? So what are the things you do? This is about now fine-tuning this and giving you a healthy brain. What do you do that can help promote endorphins in your system?
Exercise.
Exercise, brilliant. Yes?
Deep breathing.
Deep breathing, absolutely.
Proper diet.
Proper diet, yeah, good nutrients, and that can help the whole system to work. I find having friends, going out and socialising, enjoying friendship, okay, enjoying our relationships. The other thing they have found, therapy, nature has a profound effect on endorphins. Totally uplifting, to the point where you can feel quite euphoric from it if you're out in a beautiful environment. That's why I love your national parks, because I get out in them and that to me is my recharge. I recharge my batteries here in America and then go home to discharge them. Interesting. That's why I keep coming back, because you have such beautiful places. Australia does, but it's a different dynamic, you know, and having friends here is a bonus as well. So there's lots of things you can do. They found pets, having animals, you know, having or stroking, touching, and they have actually done studies on pet therapy, and they found with dogs that they wire up the dog to see the reaction, they wire up the person, and they found that the endorphins for the person patting the dog, it just shoots right up. But they found the same for the dog. So every time you pat your dog, that's getting an endorphin hit and wagging its tail and having a good time. So for children, it has to be the same. If you go and you know, care for kids or an older person, or you know, so what we do, touch is a powerful endorphin factor when we do it appropriately. Okay, so and when your brain's got endorphins, it's going to think straight. It's going to be in the present moment. Very powerful. Okay, so get out there and find some more of those endorphins and do this. If you're depressed and you think depressed, you've got adrenaline, you've got all the suppressant type things happening. If I think positively, they find that if you see someone smile, it can create an endorphin in the person watching them. Right? You can fake a smile and it can improve the endorphins. So you mightn't be feeling good, but go and smile at yourself in front of the mirror. Double whammy. Oh, no, I'm not going to do that. There. See, there's lots of things you can do that will keep the brain healthy, because if the brain's healthy and it's in the present, it's going to deal with things that it comes up. Yeah, I encourage people to practice things like in the present moment. When you're out there and you're getting frustrated, you're at the lights and you get all the red lights, practice doing your deep breathing and calming, and so you'll be 5 minutes late. You know, that was one of mine. One of my good messages, you're always late. You're never on time. So I used to, well, even now I still have to work on that one, because whenever I have to go somewhere, I've got this little program sitting there, you're always late, you're never on time. And what does that mean? People won't like you. And for my mother, who gave me the message, it was like, people will think I'm a bad mother if you're late. That when I worked it out, I realised a lot of the fear messages I got were because my mother was terrified of being ostracised in her community. We lived in a small hills community. They were very gossiping, easy to put people on the scrap heap, not want to know you, and they would gang up on people. So my mother was terrified of this, which I can understand now, but at the time a lot of the messages I got were about me looking right, being right, doing the right thing, because what will people think of you? But it was really, people think I'm a bad mother. Right? So once I understood that, as I got older, my issues with mum dissipated very rapidly. Because I knew she loved me. That wasn't the issue. It was, I understood why I became the person I did. But I didn't realise that when I started this. It took me quite a while to work through some of that. Okay, so you've got to see it as a journey. But every time you do something right, you're on the step in the right direction, and it brings relief. Okay, and then once you learn a principle, and it's like that light bulb comes on. When a light bulb comes on, the brain puts in a huge program on that light bulb, but you've got to keep using it. It's no good to then go, oh, that was good, and now I know that, wow, isn't that amazing, and walk away and forget about it. It will just dissipate again. So once you have a light bulb moment and you understand something, write it down, keep it in front of you, remember it, apply it, look at how it works in your life, okay, because you're feeding a right principle, okay. You are literally re-brainwashing. You're reprogramming the brain, and that's a powerful thing to do. If you have a look, the next step is if you have an event in your life, the event hits, and you react to the event, but in actual fact it's here you're interpreting the event that is the powerhouse. So you can have, how many events in a day would you have? From waking up to brushing your teeth, deciding for breakfast, what am I going to wear? Getting out there, the traffic everywhere, getting to work, phones ringing. I mean, you have a look, huge. Our day is full of events. Now, it's events that trigger all of this. Okay, because and this is what we call the stressors. Okay, so the stressors around you are the triggers. Now, if you're in an environment that has high stressors that keep hitting on those buttons and you can't deal with them, if there's no light at the end of that tunnel, then stress is high. That's where we then sick, burn out, can't cope. Okay, so if you have a situation where you can't see the answer to the problem, okay, then you need to look at what is the problem and what is the answer. So I look at, we need to be solution focused, not problem focused. And often we have people who are problem generators. How often do you go, oh, if that happens, oh, that won't be good, then this mightn't happen and that'll go wrong, and we've already got, so I better not do that then. And I have a family that does that, did that really well, so I learnt to do that. But now I've learnt to, okay, if that's a problem, what's the solution? Okay, so in your head, you might be looking ahead, but you're in the present with what you think might go wrong, and you've already worked out what the problem is. Then you have to leave it alone and bring yourself back into the present. Okay, then if it's a past issue, you've got to solve the problem in the present. It's just using the present moment to do that. And go, well, okay, that happened there. Why did it happen? What was my part in it? Maybe do a little bit of detective work. How can I put it to rest? And if you struggle to do it, then maybe you need a bit of help. And this is why I do the work I do. And again, I don't live in this community, so I don't know who is available. But it doesn't have to be a professional person. It might be someone you know that makes sense to you. Someone who gives you genuine feedback, or someone who understands something you need to know. And this is where, again, books. I find, again, the Bible has a lot of wonderful answers. It teaches a lot of this stuff. A lot of what I've got from here is from biblical principles about the brain and the mind and how we should be thinking, and so all that knowledge is there, we just need to use it. Science is describing all of this and finding out how the brain works, and the brain is amazing because we don't know all about the brain. Something like we know 30-40% of brain function. At any one time, the average person uses between 1 and 5% of their brain. The genius uses up to 15% of their brain. Right, so we have a lot of unknown factors there, and it's the unknown frontier. I guess it's the last frontier of science that really has big gaps in it. Technology has helped. So we all have a mind, and you all have very good minds, so how you use it can fine-tune it and you can use it in a better mode. Right? I believe we don't have to suffer from massive stress. You know? And if you have a look at the way the world's going and what's happening around us, it's huge. You know, just this morning you were looking on the internet and there's all this stuff about this bird flu, and I think if I start thinking about that, I'll go home now. You know, because it's one of those things that how much is media driven and how much is pressing our button and how much is reality. And I've decided, no. When I came over, you know, I had my family going, oh, they got this, what is it, what do they call it? Swine flu. Okay, and I'm saying, no, it's okay, I've got my echinacea, you know, I've got this, and I'm going into a country area, so, and I decided, well, you know, I'll just make sure I keep my immune system healthy, and stress won't help if I get stressed.
That's right.
Yeah, and not everyone dies of these things anyway, right? So
And I'll be staying at a doctor's house who knows how to treat it.
well, that did cross my mind. I'll just get out John's DVD on bird flu and watch it.
It's got the charcoal.
Yeah, charcoal and hot and cold. Although I'm in good hands. So it comes back to the way you view it. Well, I started to get a bit panicky. I thought, no, I'm not cancelling this trip. And I went down the track of, no, it's okay. You know, and I could stay home there and it could happen because we had supposedly 70 cases where I live in the state I live in, which is probably flu viruses that aren't this particular virus. So, yeah, but that's how it goes. So it's the way you think will determine the way you feel and the way you act and behave. So, and if you have any problems at all, whether it be high blood pressure, whether it be cholesterol problems, whether it be bone density problems, you will find what you do on these levels is a huge factor in it happening. Okay, so it's not just about exercising and changing the diet and doing all those things. You have to change the mind. They have found that people who are stressed, they can have an optimum diet. They can have all the right things, and because when you're stressed, your stomach excretes more acid, it turns to an acid environment and it is not absorbed effectively. You can have someone with a less than optimum diet, might be an average diet with things they shouldn't be eating, and they are not stressed, they are relaxed, and they can be absorbing more nutrients than the person who is highly stressed and having the perfect diet. Now, I'm not saying don't go for the perfect diet, because I believe in this day and age we really need to work on that, but it's just showing if you have the right diet and you work with your stress, you'll get younger and healthier,
That's right.
not older and worse. Yeah, so it will reverse it. But the key is here. It's how you think about it. And it does not take much to stress that button. Yes, Julie.
You know, we see hundreds, probably thousands of people in what we do across the country, and we've met countless people that, yeah, I drink my water. Oh, and I exercise. Oh, and I get my sleep every night, and I do it all right.
So what's wrong with
I'm
me?
still sick.
Yeah, I know. It's your brain. You need a transplant. I've given myself a slow transplant over time. Yes, Bob.
I think a lot of the way that you feel also converts to other people around you.
Absolutely.
For an example, I drive into LA once a week and I call it my day off. I put on 300 miles.
Yes.
And I'm in and out of traffic on freeways through town. And when you're going down through town, you just kind of, because it's my day off, I kick back and relax. I back off, let other people get in front
There's no
of me.
phones ringing at you and no things happening. And
If I need to cut over in front of somebody or change lanes, usually I'll just go ahead and wave to them. They may have been thinking that this SOB cut me off or whatever, which I hadn't done. But by waving to them seems to mellow them down.
Yep, absolutely.
They don't cash you, they don't flip you off. It just makes the whole thing easy.
It
And
does.
it's like a day off.
Yeah.
It really is.
That's good. And that means some people would find that highly stressful, but your presence of mind creates it as a less stressful thing that you actually quite enjoy doing. It's your space out. Yeah.
I
And
stop off various places, visit with people,
Road rage.
oh, big one, isn't it? You don't want to be at the end of
but
that.
it kind of cuts down on the road rage.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
at
it
least
would.
It's that way, and it just kind of mellows them out.
But if you go home and you're stressed and you rush in that door and carry on and do all these things, and you know, or even without saying anything, you know, that thing of I can cut the air with a knife principle, you know, is very uncomfortable, and everyone is starting to stress around you. You can create that environment. But if you're a happy person and you are going in with a positive approach, it's amazing what you can do when you're in a group that's negative.
Right.
I get people who go, complain about this. Oh, we've got lots of things to complain about. We can waste a lot of time complaining. Why don't you look at it like this? And I go, instead of allowing them to complain. So what you do, you respond, but you have to think like it to act like it. You have to be that person. Okay, so there's a lot of good you can do, and I find it enjoyable actually to work with people and know that I can help people feel better just by the way I respond to them and my presence. And we can all do that. That's a way of helping people and uplifting not just ourselves but those around us. And you get that harmony in a group, and it's very uplifting. The endorphins are running high in a group that is working well together and enjoying each other's company and doing all those things.
Gotta be cool and collective.
Yes, yeah. So
That's what I like to do all the time.
what do you like to do?
Cool and collective.
Cool and collected. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It's another good saying, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's why, and to be cool and collected, we have to stop thinking in stress terms, thinking emotionally, and start to tone it down. Okay. Julie, would you like to give that particular handout? That one? Yeah, with that diagram on. Because this is really now looking at the whole overview. We've done a lot about the brain and how we're affected by our interpretation of things past, present and future. But these are the nuts and bolts, because if you're going, hang on, I'm feeling bad, what am I thinking, is the key to the door. If you can stop and look at what you're thinking, if you can't let go of the thought, accept it, write it down, don't entertain it. And this can be a battle of the mind. And I find it is a real battle, because you don't want to think that, but it pops in. It's like sometimes you have a song in your head. Has anyone ever had a song in their head? And you just can't get it out of your head. And the more you feed it, the worse it gets. So you go, no, don't want that song, kick it out. Don't want that song, kick it out. And you might do it a few times, but in the end, it's gone.
Yeah.
Okay? So thoughts are like the song. Yeah, you have a pesky thought that keeps at you, you have to keep working at it. So what I've done is put this together, and it's just giving that with the feedback loops there in that first diagram. And then it says, how do you change your feelings? So I've gone through and put in just a step-by-step approach of how to use this model. Okay, so one of the things I do is, well, hang on, that's my barometer, how am I feeling? I'm angry. Well, hang on, but it's only a 5 out of 10. Rate it out of 10. Give yourself it's not too bad, but why am I feeling that way? You start questioning and looking at what's just happened. What did that person do that upset me? All right, and often you think, well, that's not very rational, is it? That's not very realistic thinking. You can start to identify it. So when you're revved up, you realise you're maybe with your anger, you're on or your frustration or your whatever it is, your sadness, you're an 8 out of 10, then do some breathing to calm the physiology, to calm the mind down and start to work with it. So one, identifying where you're at, particularly with the feelings, because they've often taken over. Then to rate it, I find rating out of 10. You don't have to do it every time, but sometimes it's good to do that just to get a reality check, because often we think things are a lot worse than they are. If 10 out of 10 of anger, well, hang on, I have to be really throwing a tizzy fit and really laying into someone, and I'm really just annoyed. We can actually bring it down a bit by doing that. Then do my breathing, calm myself down, and then identifying, what am I telling myself? What am I saying to me? What's really going on up here? And start to identify those thoughts. And as I said, you can write them down if it helps you of getting some objectivity. Then you've got to assess the thoughts you identified. Are they rational or irrational? And it's sometimes hard to pick up it's irrational, but if they keep the feeling going, like justified anger, really, even if someone's done a really bad thing, we don't have to be angry about it. What we want to do is help the person realise what they're doing isn't good.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So it's a bit like being a detective and assessing the thoughts. Now you're going to challenge them. Why am I so angry with that person? Because sometimes when I find something from the past has triggered the button, because we don't remember the past event. Okay, it's a lot what I call the loaded gun principle. What we do is a lot of emotion that we experience in the present is a memory. They say about 90% of emotions in the present is an emotional memory that's connected to the event back there, but it hasn't actually, you don't remember the event. So have you ever had the experience where someone has done something that might be trivial, a bit silly, and you just go ballistic? It's like really presses the button. You think, why am I so angry? Right? Because they've touched the button from back there that has triggered the emotional memory, and that might be feeling like you're being controlled or out of control, or a deeper button of something they're doing and they're rejecting you. Rejection is often the bottom line for all these beliefs we have, fear of rejection. Okay, so if you can step back and get a perspective, I'm overreacting. Is your reaction in proportion to the event? I think that's a fair question to ask. So there's some of the things you can do. Then once you step back from it, accepting your feelings and having a look at what can I change, changing the thinkings, then you can start to refocus in the present and you get emotional control back. Because that's what you want. You want to be in control emotionally. And being in control emotionally sometimes doesn't mean the emotion's totally gone. It might mean that you're not going to use it. You know it's not good and you're going to pay out if you open your mouth. So it might be stopping yourself and going and debriefing it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So working that way. So this actually gives you the process. Then we won't work through this. Here's an example for you to read through when you go home. And it gives you how to change. So it gives you an event, then the way you might think, your beliefs, your feelings, behaviours, problems, how you might challenge it, how can you modify the beliefs and change the feelings. Okay, so it just gives you a way of doing that. Then your problem can be resolved. So, and then I've got a worksheet that asks questions that you can actually do it. So I encourage you, maybe when you're reacting sometime in the future, get this out and have a look and go, okay, what happened? What was I thinking? How am I feeling? You can fill the column in. Usually this one you know what happened. You might fill the feelings in first and come back to the thinking. Then turn over the page and it will...
The problem doesn't it when you write it, that's
Yes.
pretty soon you're fade away. It's not as you think what it was at the time.
Yes. Okay, but it can dissipate, it can disappear. Yeah, if we don't feed it, it will. And then you've got your event again, but then it will ask you what have we got here? It says, what are your new beliefs and thoughts? How did it change the way you felt? Right, and you might have brought it down 2 notches, you mightn't have brought it right back to base level, but that's all right, you're heading in the right direction. So don't be too hard on yourself and don't expect yourself to go and it's like the magic pill that I'll never feel bad again, because that's not reality. This is a journey, you have to work on it. And you might decide to pick one area that you can work on, okay? You might decide to go home and go, okay, well I know I really have problems in this area here. I know when I come home in the afternoon I'm feeling a bit irritable and that, I'm going to work on that one. Or I know when my son does these things I react, so I'm going to work on that one. Don't work on everything at once, okay? Take your time and maybe pick an area because it all interrelates, okay? So don't think you've got to go and change everything because I find if you do that you'll get very stressed, okay? Even now I haven't changed everything but I've changed a lot of things, so I'm working on it. Okay, now what we'll do with these next 2 is just give them out because we've gone through a lot today and what I've done is like giving you a toolkit. Because to actually, like some of what we're doing today, I would do lots of sessions and we do a series of sessions and go through each section. And I know I don't have time to do that, but this gives you all the info you need. So there are 2 more sheets here that I find important. One is on what we call cognitive distortions. In other words, how are you distorting, because cognitions are thoughts, how are you distorting the way you think? And it gives you a list of possibilities. I find common ones are number 2 in here, polarised thinking. Are you an extreme black and white thinker? Is it either this or that and there's nothing in between? That's an example. Some people love to catastrophise. I call it the soap opera mentality. Okay, make mountains out of molehills. Here is this little problem that has now become a monster. Okay, so it's picking something like that and working on. How many people personalise something? They're having a go at me. You know, they're telling me I'm not a very nice person when all they said was some trivial thing that you've interpreted, it's about me. You see, a lot of this is very self-oriented. Blaming, how often do you blame? How often do you use should, I have to, I must, I should, or I'm a bad person? How often do you use emotions to make sense of things? You know, so, and I'm not going to go through them all, but there are a few of the things that we do with the mind. We've learnt to think in distortions, right? Because if you have, my father was so black and white. If I said it was black, he'd say it was white. If I said it was white, he'd change his mind again. You know, that's extreme. So this is, so I was brought up like that. I had to learn to start seeing the middle ground here and not be so extreme, right? Because I'd miss out on things. I'd think, well, I can't do that because of this, and then I'd want to do that, but I'd not do it and I'd be disappointed. So I've learnt that, no, it's okay, maybe I can let that go and do this instead. You know, I've learnt to balance things out.
Would you think if that's the way you're saying, is that the reason why a lot of these people, they after a while, they don't know what they're saying? I mean,
they get very confused and overloaded, and then they contradict themselves, or they tell you something and then they tell you something else. They get very confused. Well, that means their brain is very confused.
So then they go into a different type of...
change their mind?
No, not change your mind. I mean that disease that you get.
Oh, you're talking about Alzheimer's or dementia. You're talking about a disease where we lose the memory?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that can happen. As we get older, our brain does deteriorate a bit. And it depends on stress as to how bad and how fast that happens. But some people get a disorder where the brain cells start to break down, and it's actually physical destruction of the brain. Okay.
So
and
you're talking about bipolarism, maybe? Bipolar?
Oh, okay.
Maybe so.
Yeah, where people have extremes, they're either high or low. No. I think you're talking about forgetting, weren't you? Not, I don't know. People, because we've got different disorders.
Dual personality and bipolar, I wonder if that's what she
might be. Yeah, because we can have brain chemistry problems where the emotions are driven because the brain chemistry isn't working well, and there are disorders like bipolar disorder. They used to call it manic depression, and you never know where you are. Someone can be up 1 minute, down the next, and all over the place. Yeah, and it can be chemically driven as well.
Is that something, is it because you're not eating well?
No, it can be an inherited disorder that is triggered by stress. We can, like you inherit heart problems, you can inherit a predisposition to diabetes. For example, with diabetes, if you don't look after your health, your stress and your diet, you're more likely to get it if you've got the inherent factor. With depression and these disorders like bipolar, schizophrenia, they say there's an inherent weakness or something in the brain that under stress seems to manifest like that. Okay, so this is where stress is the enemy. That's how we started, isn't it? Stress is the enemy. So, and all of those disorders, I believe, are very treatable and are manageable, and that's part of the work I do in Australia, is treat people with these extreme disorders. Okay, and so there is an answer, and it's not an easy one always, but you know, it is possible. Okay.
I'd like to be on that side of the track.
No, nobody would. People on there don't like it either, I can assure you. It's yeah. So, but here we're talking about someone's mind who has the ability to process. Whereas if there's a chemical problem or stress problem so severe we have to treat that first, then get the person to do this. Okay, so it's like you've got to work out where they're at. Okay. Now the other sheet that I gave you has what we call, it's got 10 popular irrational beliefs. Now these aren't all of them, but they're just a few of them. And again, you might like to go through and hang on, yes, I have that belief. For example, people who procrastinate, their belief is it's easier to put off something difficult or unpleasant than to face it and do it. So you put it off, you procrastinate, because you believe it's too difficult. Okay. Number one, and a lot of them are based on the need to be loved or fearing of rejection. I must be loved or at least liked and approved of by every significant person I meet. And if you think someone doesn't like you, you feel rejected. Right? And it's not true. I've talked to people going, no, I didn't think that at all. So it's we interpret. That's based on our past belief system, how we view the world. Okay, so you'll find that if you have viewed the world from a belief system that fears rejection or feels like you're not good enough, because that's how you've grown up, that's how you interpret life, and therefore you've got to start changing it and challenging it. And to challenge it means you have to change your view. You have to start letting some good news in and say, well, hang on, am I really that bad? You know, and it's and this is where again I find because I came back to Christianity and knowing that God loves me no matter what is huge. You know, it's been a big stepping stone for me to know that I'm an acceptable person. You know, and I find I get more damage from other people than because people do a lot of damage, you know, but I'm learning not to let that happen. You know, we can be bulletproof, I believe. Even though we can still be vulnerable, we can actually learn to deal with it and not go down with it. Okay, deal with our reaction as soon as possible. So these are looking at how we distort the thinking and what beliefs we have. So if you've got distorted thoughts and you've got irrational beliefs, then you're working on this. You're going to feel miserable, down, depressed, anxious, distressed a lot of the time, and you act accordingly. Our aim is to start to challenge, why are you like this? Why are you reacting that way? Instead of looking out there like the blaming one, which is on here, and start to take charge of it and go, well, hang on, what's my part in this? And even if something does the wrong thing and it's affected you, what are you going to do about it? You know, feeling hurt and angry isn't going to solve the problem. But if you can calm down and regroup and start to get yourself in perspective, then you can say, well, I need to talk to that person. And you'll have the courage and confidence to do it eventually. Okay, because now we're looking at other skills as well. Okay, so because if you don't deal with it, you're going to sit with it, it's going to be backlogged into that memory bank, and you're going to have another thing sitting there that is a problem that's not resolved. And I found if I'm not willing to deal with it with the person, I have to be willing to let it go. In the present, I have to say, no, I'm not ready to go and front that because I might be a bit afraid or whatever, but I have to be willing to accept that I'm not going to take it on as a problem anymore. You see, so even if you're not going to go back and fully resolve it, you can still resolve it. You see, you work out where you're ready to. Okay. Any questions or? But as I said, I've given you like a whole toolkit here, which normally I would spend more time working through. So you're probably a bit overloaded. I've given you all this information. That's why I give the handouts. The other thing, which is a fairly simple process that I've had from work, it's changing your stressful habits. And it's just looking, what's the situation? And you've got that on the back of something. The old habit and what's the new skill I need? Okay, to change the old habit. Like if it's forgetting to put the blinker on when I go round the corner, what do I have to do? Well, how about I ride out and put it on my dashboard and remind myself I've got to turn my blinker on, you see. So you then find a way of solving the problem. It's a problem-solving approach. Okay, look at the solution, not the problem. So it's just giving you some different things to work with, and different people like using different tools and different things. So now, any other questions or? Because I think really we've been through a lot and I don't want to keep overloading, so I thought this might be a good point to start winding it down a bit and come to a few conclusions. I guess one of my conclusions, you can change anything you want to, you just have to know what it is and how to change it. So maybe you can go on a bit of a fact-finding mission and start to work out, what do I want to change and how am I going to change it? Now, where's my sheet?
Always add a good sheet.
What was that?
You can always add a better area.
You can. Here it is. Okay. Now, there was another little reading I had here, which I think you might have heard before, but I think puts it in a bit of a nutshell. And it's a quotation from a 20th century American writer, interesting name, Frank Outlaw, and it says, watch your thoughts, they become your words. So what we think, certainly they don't put feelings in, but that's there, and it goes through to what you speak. So watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. So what you speak, you then start doing. Okay? Then it says watch your actions, because they become your habits. So how do you develop a habit? Keep doing it over and over again. Sometimes you don't need to do it often. They become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. So what you habitually do makes you the person you are. And then it says watch your character, because it becomes your destiny. Okay. So what you are as an individual is going to determine that future line we talked about, that what's going to happen up there. Okay, so try and keep working in the present. Try and step back from things a bit more. If you're reacting, try not to act on it. Go and think it through a bit. Get some of this information out and think, well, hang on, how am I thinking here? What is going on here? And share the information. You know, people say, oh, you know, you usually react to that. So, oh, this is what I'm doing. You know, and let people know what you're doing, because people do want to know this information. You know, and we can then take it with us and help people to learn it. Well, here, look, read this. This is what I've learned. You know, because people don't always like going, oh, I learned this and you should be doing this and that. We've got to step it back from that. And you've got to become it. You know, I find that you have to do it. It's not enough just to go and learn something. We have to practice it and do it. And I guarantee if you get this in perspective, you will be better off. Your stress levels will come down. You'll start becoming someone who can be more productive, more constructive. Even if you're a high functioner, you'll find you will still fine-tune and be better off for it. So I just encourage you to do it. It's actually, because all we're asking you to do is calm down and rethink. Sounds simple, doesn't it, Julie?
One of the things that I thought was very profound of another book I read was it was called Safe People. What are they? Who are they? How to be one, how to avoid the unsafe ones. Well, it said, it was a very profound thought for me, but it said, you know you're healthy. I'm paraphrasing.
Yes.
You know you're healthy if you can go to another human being and say, what is it about me that makes you feel safe or good?
Yeah.
And what is it about me that makes you feel bad or unsafe?
What am I doing that might be affecting you?
See, we can always say, what do you like about me?
Yeah.
But can you really say, what don't you like about me? And a healthy person will be able
do that.
to tell you too. You know, to be honest.
Yes, yeah. And I've found that in the course of my journey here is that I'm now more able to go to people and say, look, if I'm doing something that is pressing your button, please let me know. Whereas before I wouldn't want to do that. Or I'll ask them and say, look, you're reacting, is it something I've done? Which is quite confronting, and then you've got to be willing to hear it.
Yeah. A lot of people can't because they're too afraid to tell you because they don't want your rejection.
That's right. Rejection is the key factor. Yeah, they're afraid they won't like you if you go and tell them that.
You know you're getting healthy when you can actually tell them and be okay, you know, with.
And the interesting thing is when we don't do that and we leave it alone, we know we've done something and that person's unhappy with it. Oh, we'll just be quiet about it. You know, it'll just go away. It doesn't. That person's affected and you're affected. So, and this is this thing of we've got to bring things out in the open. And I have found every time I've apologised to someone when I've done the wrong thing and I've owned it, the look of relief, and that person said, hardly anyone ever apologises. You know, I'm so pleased that you did that. You know, I feel so much better. And we talk about what happened, and it might be a little thing, but it's been a big moment. Okay, so I'm learning to enjoy owning my mistakes or seeing if someone's got a problem and dealing with it that way, because it breaks the bricks down between people. You know, how often do we do that? We don't. You know, we're too afraid to, as you said, but it's a great thing to do, so I encourage you. And I'm not saying walk out of this door and put all this stuff in the next week. There's a lot of it's food for thought and ways of dealing with things. Okay? Any other comments or... Okay, I can just encourage you to go and change something. Work out what you want to change and do it. It is powerful. And you'll be amazed, because what happens to people around you when you change is quite amazing. You know, so there was a good illustration I saw once of this guy had this huge mobile he'd hung up, and he was doing this talk about families, and he said, you move one bit, this is the family, you move one bit, it all moves. If you move it in the wrong direction, they all move in it. If you move it in the right direction, it's powerful. Everyone starts to move with it. Yeah, and I found that, you know, people come into the clinic and say, well, look, you know, I know what I've got to do now, but they've got a problem. My husband, my family, my kids, what am I going to do about that? They're not going to change. I said, well, if you change, they will. Yeah. You know, you won't put up with what you do if you've changed the way you view it. You go in and do this and work positively and be more open and willing and pointing things out and communicating like that, they're going to hear it. Right? Then if they don't want to do it, then you've got something different to deal with. But and they come back with that information, because people will come and go and they'll leave and do things and something happens and they'll come back and they'll say, that did work. But they've sort of got mowed down by a lot of things and come back to regroup again. So I find in working in a place like that, it's a psychiatric hospital for so long, that people as they come back give me feedback on what's working and not working. And I find every time I teach this, it works. People know it makes sense and they go and use it. And they come back and they've got to get back on track. Yes?
I was going to say, from the spiritual perspective, to understand, I think, to me, the significance, God has a plan.
Oh, he does.
He understands us, and he will help us understand
absolutely
what things to pay attention to. If I'm using a little bit too much salt, but I'm getting drunk, God's probably going to be talking to me about using too alcohol.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
before he talks about the salt.
Exactly. So in this area too, we can come to God, say, God, give me understanding.
And
that will
it's
make a
true.
big difference. It will give us peace, even through the changes.
Absolutely. We can be, this is where I call it being in the eye of the storm. And I find it's when you are centered spiritually with God that happens. And it's only when you step out in the storm you get caught in that vortex again, and you've got to step back.
That's right.
And that's that quieter space.
We can keep moving till that storm actually wears itself out.
Absolutely.
And God puts us in a better place.
I call it riding the wave. We can actually ride an emotional wave like depression. You get up, you feel flat in the morning. Well, don't dig the hole and make it worse. Ride the wave and sit with it and go, no, I'm just going to get on with my day. And it's like the tsunami, it peters out.
Right.
It's an interesting, another thing, I get all these snippets off the internet. It was about the first rule of holes is to stop digging. Okay? So how far do we dig the hole and make it worse and worse? But on that point you made about the brain, and spiritually we have a part of the brain that is the conscience, that acts as the conscience. It's in I think it's located somewhere in the frontal lobes, and what it does, it actually discerns, it makes critical value judgments or moral value judgments. Now, interestingly, the way they've found this is that alcohol actually disinhibits that button. So when you drink, what happens is that is no longer active. You can no longer make a good critical value judgment or a moral value judgment, which is why people will loosen up, de-inhibit, do things they wouldn't normally do. And they're not always appropriate things, you see. So this is why we're to look after the brain. But when we have a healthy brain, that part is active and we can hear. Like we have that connection where the conscience is quickened by God's Spirit and it moves. So it's a physical part of the brain that can be damaged. Okay, so it's interesting. I love studying the brain. There's lots of good info out there. There's good DVDs, books. Well, those two books talk about the brain and how it relates in the way we've done today. I find a lot of you can get documentaries. There's a lot of science things now, and I look at all this and learn a lot. So I encourage you to study the mind and the brain and how it works and how you can literally change it, change the blue.